Hi, guys. I am Mira Young. And if you're watching, this is If the Mira Could Talk podcast, where we talk about reflections and meet some revelations. I'm your host, Mira Young, a life architect, speaker, and I'm going to help to guide you on this journey today. This isn't just a podcast. We're going to be talking about moments of truth and moments in the mirror, because the mirror doesn't lie, but it teaches. Today, I have an amazing guest with me all the way from the UK, and I'm going to have her introduce herself. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Oh, thank you so much, Mira. Thank you for having me. Yes, my name's Natalie King, and I'm a British transformational coach. I'm also a speaker and a facilitator, and I have my own podcast too called This One Precious Life. And I have had my own practice now for 15 years, supporting people to tap into their potential and discover more about what living truthfully, authentically, and stepping more fully into their life is. And now more, I'm working in the sphere of women and women's leadership and supporting in programs to help people to show up more authentically. And in doing so, helping to have a ripple effect where we have more people in the world showing up as their true selves. And as a result of that, not only feeling better inside, but having better outcomes on the outside as well. So thank you so much. And I'm really excited for our conversation.
Me as well, because I love the concept, the one precious life. And I'm like, I know what it means to me, but what does that mean to you? And what do you try to convey through that message?
So the idea behind This One Precious Life first stemmed from the beautiful Mary Oliver program, where she asked the question, and what will you do with your one wild and precious life? You know, whether you believe that we get many lifetimes or one, in this lived experience, we have one go at really embracing whatever we get. And tomorrow is never promised, but just really trying to embrace how we want to live, how we want to show up, what we want to contribute, and make the moments count. And I think so often we see with the women I work with and who I coach that, you know, society outside us sometimes doesn't help us to show up and embrace them moments and feel in such fulfilled and satisfying ways, because we are forever busy, forever available, forever in this consumer society that we're living in and well aware of. So to really take responsibility for this precious life that we all get and come back to ourselves regularly, to our truth, whatever that means for individuals, it's different for us all. We're all different, but really coming back to what feels true. And in every day, we get choices of how we show up, of what we do and don't do, of the interactions we have, and embracing those macro and micro choices with as much integrity as possible. And I think if we do that, and the more often that we do it, and we'll go off course, as I do, and come back again, but the more we reorient ourselves to what's true, I think we can sit back at the end of the day and the end of our life and be grateful for the things we've done and the choices we've made. So yeah, tomorrow's never given. And some days today. So embrace it. Don't delay. I work with so many women and they struggle with imposter syndrome and self doubt and the inner critic. And I'm sure you do as well
Mhm.
in your work. And we can delay and put off our dreams because, yeah, it's unfamiliar and unknown. And that's scary.
And I so agree with that. I feel like post pandemic, we're always available now. Everyone is available at all times, because it's like work is always on. People are always talking to you. You're always trying to comment on something. You're always trying to communicate and like respond quickly, without missing a beat. And what do you say to those type of women that are trying to be available, trying to do everything for everyone, and also trying to also meet their own needs?
Well, what I have seen to be really true for me anyway, and you know, like we can only talk to our experience, can't we? But actually getting a lot better with the boundaries I set, because the world outside of us is always on, isn't it? Social
Hmm.
media is always on, work's always on. We're more global in our work, so we might not even, we might be working across time zones now. I mean, I'm speaking to you from the UK, and you know, you're in the US. So it's up to us to be responsible for our energy and know what boundaries we need to set in place that best serve us in order that we might thrive. And that's not easy. And I haven't done that overnight, and I'm still learning. But it's really cherishing the energy that we have and seeing it's possibly our most precious resource in our life. And if we dilute it and give it to everywhere and try and be everyone for everyone's, if we're always available, then we end up not being available for ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And when we're not available for ourselves, then what hope do we have to have meaningful interactions and contribute in the most excellent and loving ways we want to? So I think we have to wind back and get clear on what's really important to us in our lives and what energy we want to give to, the relationships, the work. Obviously, there's going to be things that call us, but
Mm-hmm.
there'll be things that are necessary and there'll be things that are less necessary. There'll be relationships that have existed and we've allowed them for there to be a dynamic in there that that dynamic might be outdated. It might not help us. And then we might need to think, well, actually, maybe I need to lean back from some relationships or lean more into others. But it really comes back to us getting clear on what's important, I think. And so there's this boundary piece and knowing that we are worthy of setting those boundaries and that we are, it's reasonable. No one can be on 24/7 and be brilliant.
And I want to touch on the boundaries because I think it's easy to say, it's the hardest to do when you're actually in a space where you have to say, actually, I'm not available, or no, I cannot do this week, this time. I have to set some time to myself. And you feel selfish as a woman sometimes to do that. And it feels like, oh my gosh, I'm telling these people no, and I'm just going to sit down and watch TV, but I just need my time to myself, or I'm going to sit down and journal. So what is one boundary that you had to set early on so that you can truly see some type of, success in what you want to, what you.
So I'll give you a couple because there's kind of like an immediate work one that comes to mind and also one that was like a more home. So give a flavor to your listeners of a
Okay.
different dynamic. So a few years ago, I recognized that I was saying sorry a lot.
Mm,
And I was like, in my emails, if someone wanted to a response, I used to say, sorry, it's taken a while, or sorry, I haven't got back to you before, when
mhm,
actually it hadn't been a long time. And I noticed I was apologizing where I didn't need to. And your
mhm,
listeners might want to reflect on this for themselves. I see this a lot. So I was apologizing for not being available
mm,
almost. You
mhm,
see this, because in my mind, I was thinking, oh, I need to reply straight away. But actually, is that true? And then I started changing my language and saying, if it had been a while, not a while, but a few days, thanks for your patience. So thanking someone for their patience as opposed to apologizing or just not even referencing. So that started to shift my mindset around being available and what was reasonable. So I add that because that's a really helpful tip. And then actually just asking yourself, taking a pause between replying. Because I used to always want to say yes, want to make other people feel comfortable. It's the people pleaser instinct that can come out. So think about, like, are you saying yes to things without really thinking, well, what is the impact to me? Because we might say yes to something, but essentially we're saying no to ourselves.
mhm,
So put a pause in between saying yes and your response, because that pause gives you time. If your default answer is just to say yes and take on whatever it is, to just set a new boundary where, well, let me have a think about it. And it might be yes, it might be no, or it might be, well, I can do that, but actually I'm going to have to rejuggle some other priorities. So can we have a conversation about that? So that's a kind of like a work boundary piece. I guess that's in relation to if people are giving you things and
mhm.
this time frame of being available, like not saying sorry when it's not deemed to say sorry. So hopefully that gives your
It
listeners a
does,
little bit to
it
think
does.
about. The personal one, it's sometimes harder with personal because it's with your loved ones. Late last year, my mother was very poorly in hospital. Now, fortunately, she's out of hospital now. She's back home
Yeah.
on the mend. There's still complications in her health. However, for a period of 5 months, she was in and out of hospital, which was, as you can possibly imagine, just a really, heartbreaking, difficult time. And she was deteriorating, and there was lots of unknowns. They didn't really understand what was going on. And to begin with, I was visiting every day.
Mm.
And for a while, that was sustainable, and I was
Mhm.
juggling things and making that happen. But a couple of months in, to be taking, because it ended up being a 2 to sometimes 3 hour trip that I didn't have previously, fitting in this hospital visit because I'm an only daughter. I'm next of kin. I wanted to be available for the doctors.
Yeah.
I wanted my mum to see me, even if sometimes she was sleeping and she didn't. So that was kind of almost like me setting a boundary with myself and actually finding a way to say, no, I need to look after myself if I'm going to be of any service to being strong for dealing with this issue and to be the loving present mum I want to be with my own daughter and the loving present wife I want to be with my husband and all the other work things that continue to flow. So, there was a point where I needed to say, okay, well, this going every day isn't sustainable, and like setting a new boundary with what that looked like. And now that's evolved over time. But because sometimes we can just outsource ourselves to everyone else all the time. And this precious energy I come back to, our life force, from which we come to take a ripple effect into the world, whatever that might touch, is eaten away. And then
Mm.
we're like, there was one point, and the light had gone out of my eyes, and people were starting to notice. So yeah, that's a completely different dimension. But once again, and hopefully proves to your audience that we're all works in progress, like a me too. But
Mhm.
yeah, it's really getting real with what's important to us and how we can look after our own energy.
This is amazingly divine because I was looking over because I had a book that is by this a lady named Rachel Hollis, and it's called Girl Stop Apologizing. And it goes through why women apologize and apologize multiple times. Now, you use it in a work sense of, oh, I'm sorry, but women sometimes could apologize, even if you may bump into somebody at the grocery. I'm sorry, 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 sorry. And you say sorry at every single stop, every angle. Anything happens. Sorry. It's not even it's not even your fault. You didn't even do anything. Sorry. So I realized I had that complex. So, like you said, using different tools to say, thank you for, giving me that, allowing me the time to respond. Thank you for, or not even saying, sometimes not saying anything, or you know, just nothing. Because I believe that we want to fill in that gap because we want to feel like the other person is seen. Because sometimes the lack of us being seen, we feel like other people may feel that way. So we want to make sure you're seen. We want to make sure you feel supported. Even if we don't know you, we're just passing by, whatever the case may be. Oh my gosh, are you okay? Everything's fine. I think that to your sorry point, we have to stop apologizing for every little thing. And also, to your point with your mom and setting boundaries for that, I think that that is the hardest thing that any person can deal with, because when when your loved one is faced with adversity, you feel like it's your job to step into that gap, and you feel like it's your job to be that person that is there for them, because like you said, you felt like nobody's there for her, even though she may have doctors, even though she may have, people that's supporting her in the medical sense. You're like, nobody's there for her emotionally, nobody is there for her. And I can sentiment with that, where my mom, she lost her mother at 12 years old and lost a lot of her relatives soon after, and her immediate relatives. So I felt like nobody was there for her. And because of that, wanting to stand in the gap and not knowing when to set boundaries and not knowing when to say, she will be taken care of, as we all are. No one can control anything, but you feel that connection to someone, or you feel like you have this empathy to them so heavily on your heart that you're the only one that can do it. No one else can stand in that gap. And versus understanding that sometimes someone is, like you said, seeing that light that is dimming in your eyes and saying, you know what, take a second to yourself. They're trying to get you out of that frantic feeling that you are now. It's you're clinging to, and you're finding comfort in that. They're going to break you down. Okay. They're going to break you down because they know what ticks you, they know what moves you, they know the empathy you have, they know the love you have. You know what? Do you want to, you want to take me somewhere, you want to do something with me. So now you're like, even though you're dead tired, you're still going to push through because they asked you and they never asked you to do anything. I do believe we have one precious life. And I want to know, what is the work that you currently do? Because I know you've been in this field for over a decade. How do you help women today to identify their precious life?
Oh, thank you. So there's sort of two spheres to my work because I work some of the time in corporate organizations where I help to facilitate programs of learning, in particular working with female leaders. They are typically longer programs working with cohorts of women who are exploring how can they show up their more authentic self as a leader, because very often in leadership journeys we sort of emulate what we see for other role models, but we might lose sight of actually who are we as a leader. What is my brand of leadership? What are the things that I value? What is the leadership footprint I want to stand for? So that's kind of like in a corporate sense, but all these things relate to any setting, right? It's just actually, it's the spice of life, I guess, to show up more fully ourselves. So when I'm not busy in my corporate work, I've got my own podcast. So that was born a couple of years ago because I was doing my work in corporate and I felt called to share what I had learned in my journey and what I am learning, continue to learn. I really see we're all works in progress. But I've got such valuable wisdom and experience and knowledge, and I want it to go out into the world in some format, and podcasting seemed the way. 2 years ago, didn't know where to start and just sort of got a microphone and worked out how to do it and began, as we all do, and that was very much an intuition of actually this is calling me. And I think that's what I'm finding in the shift of my work. The work with female leaders is calling me, and then the podcast was calling me. And isn't it interesting? Sometimes we reach a point in our careers where actually we're growing in authenticity, and that helps us tap more into our intuition, and we get more used to then trusting and following in that. And then so then there's the podcast, and then what at the moment I'm working on is creating programs for private groups, programs for women where they can look at some of the things I look at on the leadership programs, but out of the context of the corporate environment, and really helping people tap into things like these sacred boundaries we're talking about. What is most meaningful to them? What does self-care look like on an individual basis? How can we set ourselves up to radically reprioritize the way we approach life so it can set us up for more thriving, both at work and at home? So just to your point, what you see about, like, we're holistic beings, aren't we?
But I want to touch on something you said, and that's intuition in leadership as a woman. Because I believe that when you are a leader and you are trying to lead and you're trying to emulate and do, be in this corporate world, be in this competition in business, some women lose their intuition and they lose that connection to have a gut feeling versus looking at the numbers, forecast, historical data. They are now just laser focused on that, and they lose that inner, okay, this is what I'm being guided to do. Okay, this is how I should lead. What would you say to that woman that is so laser focused on the data, the forecast, the plan, everything that they've seen in corporate America and business and data, and they are now just at a place of can't hear I can't hear my intuition anymore.
Yeah. And I think I was like that. I can relate to that.
Mm,
And it's really hard as well because the way industry is very set up today is the bias is so much for task and productivity and the
mhm,
plan and linear. You know,
mhm,
intuition has nothing to do with linear.
mhm,
And everything that gets measured, in a traditional business setup is based on linear and forecasting and plan. So it's really hard to tap into it. And it might be that to begin with, we set corporate aside and we hone in on that intuition outside to sort of actually tap in and listen and respond to that gut response in areas where we feel we can do so authentically. Because I always like to think, what are the baby steps?
mhm.
Where do we start and
Right.
minimize us freaking out and panicking, set ourselves up for success. So it might be that there's, on a day you say, right, I'm gonna just tune in a little bit more and see what happens, or at a weekend. The other thing is sometimes the language intuition, sometimes the labels we give things is problematic. And
Mm,
some people might think intuition and think it's not grounded in um, good quality thinking. But
mhm.
actually, in my experience, the more I see when I follow what feels like a knowing, yeah, it hasn't really led me astray. Like, just as I've said, like, well, even the fact that we're talking is because I
Right.
put something on a podcast forum saying, here's me. So, and that was an intuitive led decision. So, oh, I'll go on a forum. So it doesn't have to feel like this voice from above it can be like an idea. It's fresh ideas. And we need headspace to do that and freedom for it to be more open. So I think the first step is to start just tuning in a little bit more. And if there's a way you can do that in a low risk sense, whether it be outside or in a smaller area in work, we all have it. We might think it's gone offline.
Mhm.
My belief is that we are all connected to that. We came into life having a guidance system, and you look at children and they're not operating on linear. They're going following the things that seem
Right,
interesting
right.
to them, and they'll rebel against when someone tries to control them. So we've just got in the habit of listening to other people
Mm,
imposing what they
mhm,
think's best. And
mhm.
so, even if you don't voice your intuition, just to start tapping into it and kind of asking, well, I know my head will say something, but what does my heart have to say? Even if it's an internal dialogue to start with, it doesn't have to be something you start expressing or doing anything with, but just start to have that relationship with self. Because you might not be aware of the connection to that part just because you might not have been in the habit of listening. But I truly believe I haven't met anyone yet where they don't have this sense. What I would also say, just to help quantify it, if this sounds very vague and nebulous, is that our body, our feelings, our emotions give us indications of this intuition at play. So when we are noticing things feel tight,
Mhm.
and constricted, sometimes that might indicate sort of like it's control showing up, or the wisdom of others. Not that that's a bad thing, but our body might be given as a reaction. And equally, if we feel expansive, or if something just feels right and aligned, that's a good indication that we might be onto something. It's like this, a felt sense almost. And you ever know, like, you've been in a conversation and someone might be gossiping about someone else, or something just feels icky. It don't feel right. And that's our intuition saying, oh yeah, no, that's steer clear,
Yeah.
or don't press send, you're too angry. This is our intuition showing up. We might just not have labeled it as intuition. That makes sense.
Yes, it does. And to your point, I think that when you're trying to tap back into your intuition, it's important to maybe grab a coloring book and go back to the basics. Because I think we get at the 30,000 foot level where we want to see everything. But let's go back to the basics of grabbing a coloring book, going for a walk, painting, doing something to tap into that creativity so that we can free our minds from every other thing, so we can really start to hear like ourselves or just our thoughts and what our thoughts are telling us, and then clear that out so that we can get to a place of where, we can hear what the next steps are. Because I think sometimes as women in leadership, we get so overwhelmed with all the decisions you got to make, all the people you have to manage, that you forget about the basics. You forget about, let's just start where we are, where we used to be.
Yes. I love that. Thank you so much for bringing that sense of creativity in, because you're so right. Just a shift from what the norm is can
Mhm.
shake up and change the dynamic. And you mentioned nature. I mean, I love to get out in nature and walk. I have a dog, so we do the dog walk every day. Or even if I don't have time, just getting out in the garden. If you've got some bare grass or something, just getting barefoot in the lawn, and
Mhm.
grounding yourself. It doesn't
That
have to take a long time. Or even just, when you have a coffee, there's a difference between rushing the coffee or just sitting and just taking a moment to let the dust settle.
and enjoy this precious life, okay?
Yeah.
Because if this is the only life we get, what would we do and how would we actually steward it? So I gotta ask you this. What is one thing, since you've discovered your found this precious life, what is one thing that you are not taking advantage of any longer and you really rest in, or you start to do in your daily regimen?
So, what I am trying to be rid of is overthinking.
Okay.
Overthinking and indecision, because I'm starting to see more and more the longer I take to make a decision or analyze something before moving forward, it is draining my energy. That
Mm,
precious resource of energy. I was coming back to that. And there's really no wrong. Just decide, just make a choice that way or that way. There's no wrong. If it's one way, there's different outcomes. So yeah, I think historically, and I'm a recovering perfectionist, so there's been procrastination, perfectionism. I've got the long list of anything to delay and avoid because wanting it to be right. But actually, what if there is no right? It's just this way or that way. And then, and whatever way we choose will be right because we were always meant to do that. So, for example, for a while, I've been wanting to do the next level, whatever my podcast is, to bring more women together and bring things I talk about in my podcast, but actually almost have like a women's circle, a gathering where there's like a mini masterclass and intention setting and some journaling. And I didn't know what it looked like. And anyway, I'd had this idea for a while, but not making a decision, not setting a date, not moving forward. And anyway, last month I set a date and made it happen. And now once a month, I've got this free circle called the Remembering, about remembering who we are, what's important, coming back to our truth. I can share the link with you so you can share it with your listeners if they're curious to
yes.
join. But back to this indecision, I can't tell you the relief and the extra surge of energy I had when I'd stopped overthinking what it could look like and just set a date and made a decision.
Mm,
And it's not that it was straight sailing, because I had to work out how I was going to do it and how I would, sort a mailing list and all these. There was some logistics, that was just like setting up a podcast, you doing something new.
mhm.
But the momentum was there. The energy was different. And if I'm really serious about embracing this one precious life, then actually doubting myself, overthinking, delaying something that feels meaningful isn't a fit. So I'm deciding that I'm growing out of that
I love that.
and moving forwards with more decision and less delay, understanding that we'll never be completely ready. We have a fiction
Mhm,
of what we think ready is, and it's
mhm,
held me back so many times. But just know there is no real ready. It's a
mm,
perception of ready. And if we have a perfectionist, high achieving nature, our bar for ready might be out of reach. So we might just need to start with where we are now and take the first step.
I love that because I think, gosh, that is so good because I'm sorry, I just got to let the people know I'm drinking watermelon juice. I decided to put it in this glass because I said I'm going to drink out of nice glasses for my juices, my like fruit juices now instead of a cup. So I'm real fancy over here. But I
Oh, well, let me just say, I love that because as soon as you put it, I thought, oh, well, I'm liking this. This is how we do our juice. So yeah, I'm taking that one. Anyway, back
yes,
to you. Sorry.
but I was just like, I love a nice glass. I'm like, it's 9:30 in the morning where I'm at, so I'm not drinking anything unholy at this time. But I definitely I think that what you said is very important. And we have to bridge this understanding. Yes, we have to bridge the understanding of it's not going to happen when we want it to happen, but it's never going to happen if we don't get started. So that's where we got to understand that if we don't get started, nothing's going to happen. And I think that a lot of excuses that people once had, they don't have them anymore because we have everything we need to actually get started. It's easier than ever. So for the women that are still thinking, I'm not good enough, it's just for those type of people, or they're better, or they have great ideas, they're smarter. Everybody starts somewhere. And like Natalie said, we're all growing, we're all evolving. Nobody knows everything because then we wouldn't have nothing else to learn. We're all growing together. Everybody is not living, we're living our own experience, but we're also learning from others' experiences. So I do believe that if we get started where you are, and it doesn't have to be a podcast, it doesn't have to be coaching. It can be something in your industry that you want to do. It could be something crazy as welding. Whatever you feel like you're led to do, I think you need to get started in it. And don't wait till the last minute or don't think it's too late. And I talk about that in every podcast because a lot of people may think, you know what, it's too late. I'm too old to be doing this. I don't want to even bother. I'm too big. I'm too this. And they come up with these excuses that they can never change because they've been this way for so long. But you can and you have to because the world is changing. And if you don't change and grow with the world, you'll be left behind. And when you wake up, you'll look around and be like, well, how am I left behind? Because you never started to grow, you never started to evolve, and you never even started. And you had every excuse in the world, everything to say back to just get started. And I think that is a pivotal moment because in when we talked earlier, I was like, I want to talk about AI because AI is changing the game as we know it, from how we do sales, marketing, even talking, even communicating in email. And what is so important for anyone listening is that you have a unique soul. You have a unique person to who you are. And that's something that can't be replicated. So if you do get started and you feel like I'm not like this, I'm not like that, or I'm not like Natalie, I'm not like Mira, I'm not like the people that I like to see, that's great because that means you have a unique being and that people are going to love, want to hear from, and want to see. And I want people to understand that because, like you said earlier, Natalie, people in the leadership industries, they want to follow other leaders. And it's great to have, some milestones that other leaders have made, but they want to be the Steve Jobs. So they want to be standoffish and rude and this and that because they see that that's that archetype where they might not even be like that. They might be a really nice person, but they know that that's what leadership calls for. So and in your industry, you may be thinking, if you're listening to this, that I want to be like whoever the top leader in your industry is, but they're not, but I'm not like that. So I won't be able to obtain that success. And I believe that it's divine for you to obtain the success that God is calling you to because you are uniquely you and you are uniquely made on this journey for yourself. So I don't want anyone to ever think that you're not good enough, it's too late, or you can't change. I want this podcast is made so that you can look in the mirror and say, even though I may have failed, I can get up and try again. And I want the people that are listening, I want them to know that growth is not going to be overnight. It's not going to be in the snap of a finger. It's like a plant growing over time, and you'll see it over time. But when it's sprouting, it feels like you can't see anything. You're like, what is this? It's so tiny. And then as it grows, you're like, it's still small. I thought it would be bigger by now. And you wake up one day and it's blossomed, and you can't even remember what it looked like at that little tiny stage. So that's how growth happens. So we must grow together, but we also must understand that we're growing uniquely, just like the plants and the trees. So I want I want Natalie, do you have any last comments that you want to leave my audience with, or any moments that you want to talk about in the Mira?
So I just wanted to reflect back the lovely metaphor you were sharing, and I agree everything you were saying, that yes, there's never too late. We all have a role to play. Nothing is ever fixed in stone. And this growth is a real thing. And about the plants, well, I always say the deeper the roots, the
Mm,
higher the rise. And we
mm,
don't see the roots. The roots are the foundation. The roots are our inner growth, our inner work, the
yeah,
way we talk to ourselves, the way we sort of set those boundaries and ask what's important and start living that. And so much of that stability and that growth and that flourishing is below the surface. So that, yeah, it takes time. And I'm 51 now. It takes time and I'm still growing.
yeah,
And actually there's beauty in that. So, the impatience and the deadline, it's a story, it's a fiction we've made up. You are on your divine timeline. And, when we just learn to be more authentic and listen to what feels important to us and go after the area of our dreams, well, it does have an accelerator effect, I guess,
yeah.
because we stand a chance at making that real. So yeah, I just wanted to say thank you so much. I've enjoyed this conversation immensely, and yeah, I wish everyone much success in following their dreams.
Well, thank you for coming on. And can you please tell everyone again where they can find you? I also put your links below, but can you please tell everyone where they can find you on all your platforms?
Of course. So if they want to tune into my podcast, it's This One Precious Life, which is on Apple and Spotify and Amazon, I believe. And on Instagram, I'm this.one.precious.life. Lots of dots in that, but you'll have the link. And as I said, there is a free women's circle online, which happens at 6 p.m. UK time. So that's your lunchtime afternoon, I reckon.
Mhm.
And that's free once a month. And the next one, which is on the 24th of July, I don't know what time this is going out, is all about self-trust. So
Mm.
I can give you the link if people are curious to sign up for
Yes.
that too. So yeah, thank you.
And I just want to thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for spending time. If you've made it to the end, I want you guys to please write down. I want you to grab a journal, grab a pen, write down some things that really resonated with you, because I don't want you to just watch this and go on about your day. I want you to watch this and have this to transform your day, have this to start to transform your life. As we have guests on here, I want you to understand that growth does not always shout. Sometimes it just whispers. But it can whisper through your pen, through your journal, and through your actions. So until next time, if no one's told you today, I love you, God loves you, peace.